Buenos dias.
Yeah, baby. All right, in an effort to bring you more fun, freedom, and phenomenon, this is Troy Casey, Certified Health Nut, and this is going to be the fashion edition. Many of you guys know that I was a Versace model for many years. That's how I got into health, taking care of myself in front of the camera, looking and feeling my best, having some digestive issues when I was living in Milan, bloating, etc. And so I uncovered and unpacked fasting, internal purification, gut health, nutrition, etc. And so that's how I became Certified Health Nut. 35 years later, it's coming full circle. I'm sitting with my good friend Sasha from Sun Gods, California. We are doing a collaboration, a fashion collaboration coming up. Sasha's been a student of mine for a couple of years, so I was able to help him post-fashion career. So we're going to unpack everything, starting out with surfing, then his discovery with the famous Bruce Weber, photographer of Calvin Klein Obsession ads, and many other, Abercrombie and Fitch. And he was the man that would really make your career back in the day. And so Sasha's going to talk about his discovery with that from the surf shop here in Southern California, and then how he moved on from there, where our paths crossed in Milan and in Tokyo. And then from there, he became a world-renowned photographer, shooting the who's who of rock and roll royalty, etc. And then coming full circle back to surfing with Sun Gods California, which I am adorned in his fashion for the past 5 years. I'm very grateful for everything he has brought into Certified Health Nut. A lot of joie de vie and color. He makes me purple pants, and I love it.
Yeah,
purple
baby.
pants and purple shorts. And so without further ado, thank you, Sasha from Sun Gods California, for joining Certified Health Nut HQ. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for that wonderful intro. That's really kind. Let's get into it.
So let's get into it, man. We're in Southern California right now. We're in Encinitas. I know you invite me surfing all the time. I've been in the ocean this past weekend, and I come from the desert. I've since moved on to Arizona for a little while, and I'm back here, and you live here full time.
Yeah.
And so take us all the way back, buddy. Are we talking late 80s? I started my career in 1988. So let's see where we intertwine.
I guess I'm I don't know how many years younger than you I am. I'm a few years younger, not much, but I was born in 72. I'm 52 now. So I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, which is Orange County, a little bit north of here. And growing up, we didn't live like right at the beach. Like, we lived a little bit inland, but not far, like 10 minutes up the road from the beach, So all the kids, one way or another, usually ended up surfing, or you were at the beach a lot, and then if you were lucky enough, somebody would give you a surfboard, and then you more or less you'd become a surfer. It's just what everybody did, and we would go we'd either ride our bikes down to the beach, or our parents, before we had a driver's license, our parents would bring us down to the beach and pretty much just drop you off at the beach and give you like some quarters, and so you could go surf all day, buy a slice of pizza and a Coke, and then when you're done, go to the payphone and and call your mom or dad and say, okay, come pick us up. And sometimes it'd be the winter, you're standing there in your wetsuit, freezing cold, and you're at the payphone and you're like, hey mom, come pick us up. But a lot of times what we would do, we'd go to this shop that was right across the street from where all of my friends surf, which was called the River Jetties, and it's actually in Newport Beach. It's just over the bridge into Newport from Huntington, and it's a straight shot from my parents' house. So the Frog House was right across the street. It's a epic, legendary surf shop that's been there since, I think they've been there since 1963, opened by Frank Frog Jensen, who was apparently quite a character, but that's another story. Anyway, so we'd hang out at the Frog House and, listen to the old guys there, the old timer guys, tell their surf stories and about the golden days and their legendary tales of, surfing lore. And we'd hang out with them and play backgammon or watch surf videos. And this went on for many years. And then when I was in high school, one day, TK, the owner, he said, hey, Sasha, like, how would you like to have a job here? You want to work here? And I was kind of like, are you kidding? And he's like, no, you're here all the time anyway. You want a job here? Why don't you can be lowest man on the totem pole. And I was like, sign me up. Hell yeah. I was like, yeah. I was like, so.
Low man on the totem pole?
Yeah,
I'll take it.
I'm in, yeah. And at that point, I was basically like a made man in my world, amongst my buddies. I remember I went to school the next day or whatever it was and told everybody that I got hired at the Frog House. I was going to be working at the Frog House. And the people were like, holy shit, you got a job at the Frog House? Oh my God, dude, you're so set. And that's what it was. You were set. And
but I'd like to point out, because I've heard your story before, and you had a lot of luck of the Irish in your life. So being a made man in surfing, and then
a lot of luck. Yeah, I don't know why. Born under a lucky star, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Aquarian luck. Anyway, so yeah, I got the job, and that was like, yeah, it was like kind of like you're a made man. Like even today, if you go into the Frog House, half of the guys in there are people that I worked with in the late '80s. So once you get a job at the Frog House, you don't necessarily leave, because it's good. It's a good life. You get paid surf breaks. You're at the beach. You get all your wetsuits and your boards more or less for free. You go on surf trips with the different shops. It's a cool scene, you know. So you're kind of set.
And the one thing I like about surfers is they are connected to the earth and to the water. They're grounded, and they have a little bit more of a grounded personality, and they're one with nature. And so it's a pretty cool lifestyle.
That is what surfing is. That's what surfing actually is. When people talk about like soul surfers or soul surfing, like originally surfing before the industry blew up and the competitive thing really became what it is now, and they're in the Olympics and everything else. Surfing is more like a martial art, I would say. Like if you're really in tune with it and practicing it properly, like it's all to do with, being in tune with nature and the wave.
Spiritual practice.
It's
ultimately.
Totally spiritual. I guess it's the closest thing that I could say. I don't know, kung fu or something, but I guess it's like kung fu or playing the guitar or something like that. You're never going to master it, but you always get better and better and better. And now at 52, living here, surfing all the time, I'm probably surfing better than I ever have in my entire life. I know I am, but it's just because my knowledge is so much more. I have so much experience and so much time in nature and in the water, and just so I'm just super in tune with it, and that's a wonderful thing. So I'm lucky to experience that, because when you paddle out there, you're kind of paddling out into another world when you leave the shore, especially here where we have some reefs that are further out. So you're far from the shore, and you're with all kinds of marine life, and then you're with this weird ecosystem of surfers around you as well, and that's another trippy thing. But anyway,
I was out there this morning and witnessing, a girl was standing up and she had a nice little ride, and I said, I was a little bit envious, it looked like she was one with, and she was at the top of the lineup and nobody was in her way, and I was like, wow, she's in the zone.
She's in the zone, exactly. That's what it is, the zone. But we'll get you in the water next time, buddy. But working at the Frog House. So I'm in there, doing my Frog House job, and one day, normally it's just kind of like regular people from the beach that coming in and out of the shop, like, hey, I need a bar of wax, or hey, I want to check out these boards. But this one day, these people that were clearly not beach people and not Southern California people came in, and it turns out they were New York City people, and they were like, it was a heavyset guy with a bandana on his head, and I think 2 women with him, and they were started talking to TK, the owner, and then they said, we're looking for surfers. We're doing a photo shoot for this little thing called Ralph Lauren, and I didn't know about fashion. I didn't know what Ralph Lauren was. I don't think anyone in the shop did, actually. But anyway, so they're explaining this, and they're looking at me, and they're kind of looking at one or 2 of the other guys in there, and then they're like pointing at me, and then and I, at the time, believe it or not, I was really skinny, just skinny 19-year-old blonde surfer kid. So I had the look of that
And I want to say that Bruce Weber would go to varsity sports, rowing, football, rugby, and he would recruit excellent-looking athletes with ripped and chiseled bodies in their youngest prime, and cast them for Calvin Klein ads. Lifeguards, a lot of my friends in Miami were recruited by
wrestlers.
him. Yeah, correct. And with just
like that.
Great body. So that was his je ne sais quoi, is to get a perfect specimen to photograph, ultimately.
Yep. So I didn't know any of this. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything. But so they're like, hey, let us take some Polaroids of you. And I was kind of like reluctant. I was like, okay.
What are you, gay?
Yeah, pretty much. We were like, and so they take these Polaroids. And then they're like, oh, well, here, let's, take our information. What's your number? And I think I was like, I'm not giving these people my phone number, my mom's phone number. I was like, no, just give me your information. And then anyway, so I took their information and they left. They left the shop, and the minute they walked out the door, we were all just like busted up laughing. We were all just like, how was that? Those guys were fags. Like what? Just. Clowning, laughing around, and never thinking that I was ever going to call them back, because we just didn't know what it was. Anyway, my mom, unlike me, followed fashion, and she had her Vogue magazine subscription and Harper's Bazaar and all that, and she found the Bruce Weber paperwork in my pants pockets, and she came to me and she's like, hey, what's this? Why do you have this Bruce Weber stuff? And I was like, oh, that was just some weird dude that came in the shop that wanted to photograph me for something, like some modeling thing. And she was like, well, that's Bruce Weber's very well-known photographer, world renowned photographer. She said, that's could be a big deal. What was it? And I said,
I just want to say that when in my era, and that was my era, if Bruce Weber was around and you were already a known model, that was a big deal.
Fucking deal.
Yeah, that was like working with Steven Spielberg in film.
Absolutely.
And so, and you knew as a model you would make a lot of money from there or do a major campaign.
It would change your life. It would change your career entirely.
And actually, that's what happened with you. So keep going.
So she's like, what did they want to do? And I said, I don't know. It's something called Ralph. And she's like, Ralph Lauren? And I said, yeah, that. And she's like, oh, that's a very big deal. You should call them back. And I said, all right. And by this point, a couple weeks had passed, I guess. And so eventually I called the number and I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but my name's Sasha. I was that surfer kid guy that you saw at the Frog House surf shop. I said, and they're like, oh yeah. We remember you. And they're like, oh, we were hoping you'd call back. And I said, yeah, well, I could do that thing. I talked to my mom. She said it's okay. I can do it if you still want to do it. And they're like, oh, we already shot Ralph. We did that. But you know what? Bruce is shooting Interview magazine tomorrow. We're actually here in Hollywood. We're at the Chateau Marmont, and he's shooting Interview tomorrow. Why don't you come up for that? And I was just like, okay, yeah, sure. And I didn't know what Interview magazine was, but Interview magazine was a big deal too. The magazine was started by Andy Warhol. It was kind of like the most avant-garde, cool fashion magazine out of New York that you could do, and had been all through the 70s and 80s, and still was at that time. And Bruce was kind of like the main guy that shot everything for Interview. It was like his own private portfolio, essentially. Anyway.
And the Chateau Marmont was where Helmut Newton used to hang out. And one of my first jobs in 1988, coming out of San Diego, was with Helmut Newton for Gucci. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I actually never ended up seeing those photographs, but it was an incredible experience, and I got to say that I worked with Helmut Newton.
That's really cool. Yeah.
And so
I read Helmut Newton's book, by the way. Really, really cool. Yeah, his autobiography. Anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, Chateau Marmont is iconic. I think Belushi was known to party there. Rolling Stones.
Everybody partied there. Yeah, but at this point in my life, I had never heard of it. I'd never heard of the Chateau Marmont. I never even practically heard of. I didn't know anything about L.A. or Hollywood. Never been there, because as a surfer in Orange County, even though we're only barely an hour to the south, we would just be like, L.A. We're not going there.
Right.
Like, why? Why would you ever go there? Like, we'd come down here, we'd come down to North County, San Diego to surf around here on our way to Baja to surf K38 or La Fonda or San Miguel, but never would we go to LA. Or you'd just bypass it to get to Rincon or points in Santa Barbara. But yeah, we didn't go to LA ever. Anyway, so I was like, oh shit, I gotta go to LA. So
Shooting Interview magazine.
Shooting Interview magazine. So I show up, find the Chateau Marmont, find these their photo shoot, walk in, and when I arrived, there's like, I think like 10 or 12 other guys that look exactly like me, more or less, like skinny, little like blonde surfer guys. Some of whom I kind of even sort of knew or was aware of, like maybe they were like guys from other shops up and down the coast. And I was like, oh, this is trippy. You know, because I think maybe I had it in my head that maybe I was going to be the only one there, but no, I wasn't. There was a group of people, and then they're like, okay, the Frog House guy is here, and then they're like, okay, come in, let's get you into wardrobe, and and I go into this room, and it's just full of like leather gear, like Harley Davidson motorcycle jackets, and leather chaps, and leather biker pants, and hats and stuff, and I was like, whoa, because I think in my mind I thought maybe they were going to dress us in like Quicksilver or like Billabong or something. I just didn't have the perception of what was going to go on. But anyway, sure enough, they dressed me up like I was Marlon Brando in the Wild Ones or whatever that movie was. So I had a little leather cap on, leather jacket, leather pants, leather everything, and I was like...
It must have been a theme, because when I did Versace, there was a bunch of leather there, too.
It was the 90s, yeah. It was the 90s, baby. And, you know, so, this was probably like 1990 or 91.
Well, is it a homosexual fetish fantasy kind of thing? Or?
For sure. I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, totally. We were dressed like the village people. Basically.
So there you are, surfers in leather.
Surfers in leather, and we're all just kind of like looking at each other going like, dude, this is fucking weird, right? And I'm like, yeah, this is really weird. And they're like, okay, your turn. Bruce is ready for you. And I walked out onto the lawn, that backyard kind of lawn at the chateau, and I remember they put like a white rose or some kind of white flower behind my ear, and he was like, oh yeah, that's really nice. So he's like, yeah, sit there, like tilt your head like this, and oh yeah, like that's a nice sensitive look, like oh yeah. And I was thinking like, am I doing this right? Like this what? And I practically just froze up. I don't know what I was doing, but I was just, he took these pictures. He seemed happy. Everybody was like, oh yeah, it's really good. Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh,
beautiful,
gorgeous.
beautiful,
amazing. Yeah. And I was just like, okay. And I think I changed outfits a couple times into like another different motorcycle look. And we did this throughout the day. And then, so I kind of relaxed and it was going pretty good. And then, what was really special that happened was this black dude, like a really cool cat, showed up, and he turned out to be Bruce's really good friend, and I didn't know it then, but he was going to become my first agent. And this is Omar, who...
Omi the homie.
If you know this time period that we're talking about, and you know fashion, and you know about male modeling, you know who Omar was.
He was my agent, Tony Ward's. He kind of had like the grease monkey, like street kind of dude.
He was a big model himself. He was the first black dude who was ever on the cover of American GQ. I found out later. I think he's originally from Panama. Anyway, super stylish dude, really, really fit, really cool. Not gay as I remember. I think he was straight.
Homie the homie. And he owned Omar's Men, and I was with him for years. And
and that was the hottest agency in LA at the time, like the most avant-garde men's modeling agency. Anyway, so Bruce introduced me to him, and then he did the same thing. He's like, hey, let me take Polaroids of you. So we do some Polaroids, and he's like, how would you like to go to Japan? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, how would you like to go to Japan? And he's like, I'm friends, my friends from such and such agency in Tokyo. They're in town right now. I'm going to show them your stuff, and maybe get you a contract. How about that? And I was like, yeah, sure. Just thinking that
it all sounds.
It sounded like complete bullshit. So I was just assuming that everybody was gay and everybody was full of shit, kind of. But Anyway, it turns out that he wasn't.
Well, so I just want to map that out because I went through the whole process myself. There is no manual. There is no manual to how to stand in front of a camera. You know, you have a certain level of genetics, a certain physique, or whatever, and people just want to take your picture. And then as you advance and start doing commercials, they do expect you to move in a certain way. But nobody taught me
I've got another little story about this that I'll tell in a minute. But yeah, you everything you think you know about taking a picture, now it's different because everyone has friggin' camera phone. You know, everyone's
people compose.
So everyone's used to having their picture taken all the time, kind of, right? Back then, nobody took your picture. Like your mom would take your picture occasionally, or like, you know, when you're on vacation, or you'd get a school picture occasionally. But you weren't walking around being photographed all the time. So you kind of just thought like, hey, I just smile or whatever, you know, whatever. But no, it's not that. It's just, you got to look. There's a whole thing to it. But anyway, we'll get into it in a minute. But so yeah, Omar takes these Polaroids. I go home and I'm like, all right, that all worked out. Like my mom's like, wow, cool. You did the shoot with Bruce. I'm like, yeah. And that's it. You know, I never heard from them again. I didn't expect to hear from them again. I was just like, oh, cool. You know, I think they paid me a couple $100. I don't remember. But I thought like, all right, well, that'll be cool. I'll get to see my picture in this magazine when it comes out. But then a couple weeks later, Omar...
Editorial, you don't get paid.
Yeah, it's not...
Campaigns, advertising, you get paid. Catalogs, you get paid a little bit less. And then editorial, you get paid not much at all.
And guess what? Any male model... They would fucking pay to be in the Bruce Weber shoot. You know, you're doing it for free. I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but you would crawl over broken glass to be in the Bruce Weber shoot because it's like you got tapped with the friggin' magic fashion wand and you're going to be on your way, basically. I didn't know this, but that's what it was. So Omar's like calls me and he's like, hey, guess what? I got you a contract to go to Tokyo. With I think the agency was Team Aviva, and he's like, it's pretty basic contract, pretty standard. It's 2 months, $10,000 guarantee, whether you book a job or not. But hopefully you'll make more than that. But even if you don't work a day, you're coming home with 10 grand. And to me at the time, in like 1990 or 91 or whatever it was, $10,000. Literally sounded like $1 million. That's what it sounded like to my ears. I was like, 10,000? What? I was like, oh my God. So I told my mom and dad, and they were like, you know, a little apprehensive, a little suspicious, but they're, you know, my parents were pretty cool, like bohemian people who traveled and been all over the world. And anyway, so they were like, this sounds pretty good. Like, if you want to do this, you can do it. And it was at a time when I was supposed to go to college. I was just in the process of getting accepted to UCSD, UC San Diego, which was a good school. So it was a little bit like, oh shit, like, do I go to Tokyo or do I go to school? And then, so what I did was I took a leave of absence from the semester was about to start, and instead I went to Tokyo. And I got ready for my trip, flew to Tokyo, arrived. It's winter time. I didn't really understand what the conditions were, but when I arrived in Tokyo, it was snowing. I think I got there at the end of January or beginning of February, and it was snowing. They picked me up at the airport. I've got a big double surfboard bag with my surfboards, and I'm thinking I'm going to go to Niijima Island or somewhere in Japan and go surfing like I've seen the videos of. And they're all just like, what? Nanda, why you bring surfboard? you don't have time for surfing. This trip, I think, maybe not. And so I'm like, oh, well, I'm sorry. Dame, you're not going surfing. But anyway, so they picked me up at the airport, and they picked up me and like one other, a model girl, like I think a Russian girl or Brazilian girl or something. And
was she 13?
No, she was like a more experienced model. She was probably like 18, and she was probably the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen in my life up until that point. And I was just like super intimidated. She was like 6 feet tall, and to me looked like a movie star. I was like, I got picked up at the airport at Narita with me and it looked like Michelle Pfeiffer or Sharon Stone or somebody, you know, but better, like the fashion version of that. Like, I was just like, holy shit, this girl's like, you know, we ain't at the beach anymore, you know. This girl's smoking hot, and she's like speaking French and you know, talking about Paris and this and that.
Very cosmopolitan.
Super
experience.
cosmopolitan. And then so we drive into Tokyo, and I remember it was snowing, and it was nighttime, and all the lights were coming on, and all that like neon color. And I'm looking out the van window, and the snow's coming down, and I'm seeing all this neon colored light reflecting on everything. Driving into the neighborhood where the model's apartment was, and I saw a couple. I remember it really struck me. It was a guy and a girl who already by that point I realized they were, you know, like European or Western. They weren't Japanese, and they were like tall and beautiful people. And I realized these two people are also models. And I'm coming. This must be where the models live, and it was. It was a little model neighborhood where they had all the apartments. It was Moto Azabu, and I'm coming in, and I saw this couple, and the guy's walking down this studly dude, like way more better looking than me, you know, and super stud with this super mega babe on his arm, and they're like strolling out into the snow to go do whatever, like their cosmopolitan life in Tokyo. And I'm just like, holy shit, this is fucking cool. Am I gonna get to do this? Am I gonna cut it? And I was friggin' intimidated by that point. I was like, I was amazed, but I was scared shitless too. I'm like thinking like I'm way out of my league, way out of my league, you know. I'm like,
it was probably me and my girlfriend.
Yeah, it was Troy. It probably could have been, yeah, totally. But I was thinking, holy fuck, here we go. So I remember like I'm going around on these castings for the first couple weeks, and I booked like some dinky job for a Japanese magazine called Fine Boys, which it's like the job that every model when they first get to Japan that they get booked for Fine Boys, which was kind of like a Tiger Beat or Teen Beat type magazine, but fashion. And they just at that time, like if you were halfway decent at all, you would be in Fine Boys. So we got booked for this Fine Boys shoot, and it was me and like two other guys, and they drove us out to the. Actually, we drove like 3 or 4 hours outside of Tokyo, like early in the morning. And we went to the beach, this beach area to shoot. And we just did some shots in the morning by the beach, and then they moved into a studio in the afternoon. And I remember it was my turn. They dressed me, and I was okay doing the shots at the beach because I was just like, okay, I could just stand here, you know, kick this rock around or stand under this tree or whatever, and I'd look halfway natural, you know. But then they moved us into the studio in the afternoon, and there's just this huge white blank space, and the crew is like, hi, your turn, please, hi, dozo, please. And so I walk out into the studio, I'm staring back at like 30 or 40 people looking at me, all these Japanese people, and they're like, hi, please, model now. And I'm like literally a deer in the headlight, frozen, and I didn't know.
What do I do?
And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, no, please, model, please. And I was just like, I was about to cry, literally about to cry, because I was so nervous and so scared, and I froze up. I didn't know what I was doing, and thank God this other dude on the shoot, I forget his name, like some like a London kid who was like, he'd been in the game already for a year or two, and he literally ran out onto the floor, grabbed me, he's like, mate, come here. And he's like, pulls me up, he's like, it's just a fucking lock, mate. They don't give a shit. Just act fucking stupid. He's like, jump around, be a fucking idiot, man. Just jump, go woohoo, yeah, well, whatever, man. He's like, they fucking love it, trust me. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, just be fucking stupid, man. He's like, it's not serious. They like anything we do. They like anything we do. And I was like, okay. And he's like, get back out there. And like, so I go back out, and I'm just like, all right, I better fucking do this, otherwise I'm toast, you know. So I go out there, and I'm like, woohoo, you know, like I jump out, and I'm like, okay, and they're like, sugoi, yeah, big action, it's good, yeah, please do more big action. So I'm like, big action, like jumping, doing stuff, funny stuff. And they're like, yeah, please try back style. And I'm back style. And then I look at the English guy and he's like, they mean like, look over your shoulder at the camera, turn around. I'm like, oh, this is back style? He's like, yeah, do back, yeah, oh. And so I'm like looking over my shoulder at the camera. And they're like, yeah, nice, it's good back style. Yeah, thank you. And like, and then finally, I did enough pictures. I walked. They like let me off the floor, and I kind of took a deep breath. And I go back over to the English guy. And I'm like, "Oh, dude, thank you, you saved my life." And he's like, "Told you, mate. It's fucking easy. Just just take the piss, man." And I was like, "Okay, I think I can do this." And that was my introduction to modeling 101. How you do it. I mean, it wasn't always like back style and big action, but that was. From back style and big action, I was able to learn what I was supposed to do and eventually become good at modeling. But but in Japan it was so funny.
There was no book or class to take,
Nothing.
And then Japanese modeling and catalog modeling is way different than being on a Vogue shoot or a campaign where there is no fake smiling, jumping, or
once you graduate to like more like real high fashion stuff, you're basically like an actor. You're supposed to emote a certain emotion, but in a really subtle way, which is really a lot of times all that takes is to kind of just look at the camera with your mouth sort of half open or something, or like or don't look at the camera, like look away, or do whatever it is. You kind of have to do these subtle things to kind of you're a low grade actor is what you are, and that's why so many models become actors, because you are acting, but it's just super basic. But it's actually not easy because you're having to act. It's like being in a silent movie, like you're having to act like without, you can't say anything, you can't do anything. You're except once you're on a TV commercial or something. But you must know this.
Well, and there was no classes, and then you get around art directors that have sticks up their butt, and they want a certain thing, and they can't communicate it, or there is no communication textbook on how to get a certain emotion out of a person that has no education, maybe in acting. Yeah. Now, there were a handful of actors that became models for extra money. And
some really big ones.
And some of them went to school and actually had more experience with just being. So there was, in some forms of fashion and editorial, there was more being. And then when there was catalog, it was like, get the big smiles and energy and jump. And
so there was two.
There's a lot of mind reading that went along with trying to figure out what the art director or the photographer actually wanted. Because when you shot with Bruce, it was like, oh no, that's beautiful, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And then when you get with the Japanese, they're like,
big action.
No, back style. Like,
big
what?
action. So
a lot of mystery.
A lot of mystery. And then in Japan, if you've seen the movie Lost in Translation, it's kind of like that, because they're always like having these really in-depth conversations behind the scenes, like with the crew, like the art directors discussing something, and then you think they've come up with some really important plan, and then they'll turn to you and say, please, big action. Or something like that. But eventually I came to understand the Japanese really well, and I really fell in love with being in Japan. It's so fun.
I loved it as well. I had so much fun. I did 5 tours, and you did.
So I ended up going to Japan under these contracts like this. I went 12 times over.
Which is a lot.
I went 12 times over an 8-year period. From 91 till about 90. I think my last tour of duty in Japan was in 98, when I was pushing 27 or 28, which by that point this was kind of old for a model.
So let's segue from you did the fashion career. It's a very interesting entry point. Didn't really know about it.
So it wasn't just Tokyo though, because right after Tokyo.
We missed each other.
Right after Tokyo, Omar sent me to Milan. And so I had a great 2 months in Tokyo. I didn't work a ton, but made my contract, got paid $10,000, came home, bought a friggin' used Porsche 944, thought I was, the bee's knees, Mr. Cool model guy. Drove the Porsche down to the Frog House, I think, said hi to those guys, and they're like, whoa, what's up, mister? Hollywood or whatever. They were, laughing at me, but they were stoked. And then I was like, yeah, check it. I'm going to Milan now. And they're like, what the hell's that? I'm like, it's a city in Italy, dipshit. And so I went to Milan, and then in Milan, I found out that it was a way tougher game than what we'd experienced in Tokyo. Because Tokyo, at that time, you were completely taken care of, babied the whole way. Like, they pick you up at the airport in a really nice van, and then they drive you to all your castings in this air-conditioned, beautiful van with the other models or beautiful girls. And then at night, you go to Lexington Queen, which was the Roppongi nightclub where all the models would go. And when I
free drinks.
When I say we went to Lexington Queen, we went there every friggin' night, because not only was it free drinks, it was free dinner too.
Free food, it was free dinner, free entry,
drinks, and just shit. Like, it was like you might have had it in your head that you were gonna go to Japan as a young guy and like maybe hook up with a Japanese girl or meet Japanese girls, but no, it doesn't happen because you're too busy hooking up with all these model girls. The Brazilian girl, the French girl, the German girl, the Russian girls. It's just you're like, it's like being at a high
being a rock star with no talent.
It's like being at it's like being at a youth club, youth field trip group where everyone's beautiful and you're all like of age to party and get down, and that's exactly what happens, and it's just you're free on the loose in this wild city that doesn't even feel like you're on Earth. You feel like you're off the Earth on some satellite or something, because Tokyo is so different, especially when you're 19 and you come from the beach in California or other people came from even weirder places, from like some podunk town in Russia or who knows where, So suddenly they're in Tokyo, you're at the glamorous nightclub, you're with all the chicks, and it's just too fun. But anyway, so then flash forward, I go to Milan, and then the cold hard reality of what modeling actually is kicks in, because you arrive at the airport and there's nobody there to meet you, and you're like, there's no cell phones yet, there's no nothing, there's no internet, and you're like, and all you have is some piece of paper with some agency's address written down on it, and you're like, okay, I gotta get to this agency, and like maybe you have enough money for a taxi, maybe you don't, maybe you have to like get on a bus and a train, and you're lugging your shit, and you show up at this agency, and like you're thinking that they're gonna be like, waiting to roll out the red carpet for you, and then you just show up and they're like almost like, wait, looking at the books like, who are you again? Like, oh yeah, you're Omar's kid from LA. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, bello, listen, senti bello. Write down this address. It's a place, it's called the Darsna. Go there and get a room. You're going to live there. And you're like,
figure it out, kid.
Yeah, and they've got nothing set up for you. Nothing's been arranged, and you're just like, what? Like, I was kind of shocked, because I was like, oh, wait, so not only you didn't pick me up at the airport, and I've got to go and find my own apartment now? And like, nothing's been arranged, and that's just the way it was from the get-go with Italy, and that's what most of modeling is, actually.
And the money too is like, oh, we're going to take 50%. Not only is the money not as good, but then we're going to take 50%.
Yeah. And so it was suddenly like a way drearier reality. You're in Italy, the food's amazing, but you're just half the time you're just kicking around town with just these beefcakes from all over America. And for me, at the time, believe it or not, I was like a skinny blonde surfer kid. But so I'm just it's still like, we're still coming out of the 80s, it's in the early 90s, and most of the models were like older than me, and they were like all super, super buff. They were like, a lot of them were just like straight up like bodybuilders, they looked ridiculous, And I remember when I got to that apartment and got my room set up, going out on the balcony, and this whole apartment building was filled with male models and girls living there. And there's dudes out on the balcony with bench presses, just like pumping iron, like fully just like lifting weights and stuff, and like slapping high fives, and like, yeah, bro, you crushed that set. And I'm like, holy shit, these dudes are fucking lame. This is so stupid. And I'm like, you know, really not fitting in with this crowd because I'm just this like surfer guy, and these dudes were like full on, you know, model meatheads, but they were doing well, a lot of them, you know, really well. And anyway, so I had to kind of find my way in this environment. And should we wait for Troy? Yeah, let's wait. We'll just hold.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's easier.
I'm just gonna let everything run.
Yeah, we're doing good though, right? Like I'm getting a little more like cool detail. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just wait for main man.
We cut all this out.
Yeah, it's fine. I wouldn't stop it. I just let it go. He'll be back in a minute.
I'm just gonna mark.
Troy, we're waiting for you.
Okay, we're good. Keep going. And we do want to get into the photography.
No, we're getting there. We got to get
the
there.
camera, Troy?
No, just leave it.
So yeah, there's like dudes out on the balcony, like literally like pumping iron, and I wasn't buff. I was fit, but I was just like a surfer, you know, normal surfer guy. And I remember my modeling agent at the agency was called Ugly People, and they worked a lot with
Calvin French's
agency. Yeah,
the
Ugly
Queen.
People, and they were bros with Omi the Homie back in LA, so he had set me up with them. So I remember I forget her name, Marcella or somebody like that. She was like, "Bello, why don't you go to the gym like the other boys?" And I was like, "The gym, really?" And because I was a surfer, I was just like, "I don't want to go to the gym." No, please make your body more nice. Please try. Please make some more muscles. It's better. And I was just like, oh God. And so I had to like start doing that. And I remember at the time, like the fitness tips that you would hear from the other models are like, dude, all you need to do is just eat pasta all day. You get this many cans of tuna and just wake up in the morning, eat pasta, go to the gym, get pumped, and then like come home, eat some more pasta. And then like, and so I at that time I was like, so if you want to be buff, you just eat pasta endlessly and lift weights. That was like the health knowledge of the day. Do you remember that?
I mean, kind of.
Yeah, that's what I heard from these knuckleheads. Anyway, so this goes on, and it repeats in other cities. I do the same thing in Paris. I do the same thing in London, and but all throughout this time, I'm doing like 6 months of modeling, and then I start going back to school and taking a break from modeling and going back, and I go to San Diego, and I do like 6 months of school at UC San Diego, I'm a film major. I was really into movies, and I thought I could be a director, or I wanted to be a director. I liked film movies, so I was taking this media arts film degree, and believe it or not, they actually had a really good film program at UC San Diego, but it was really avant-garde, you know. I didn't know that. I wanted to I thought I wanted to make like Hollywood movies, but so I get to this program and they're showing us stuff like Kenneth Anger movies and Andy Warhol movies and Stan Brakhage movies, and if you Google any of this stuff, you'll know it's really weird shit. It's super weird, like, you know, and I'm just like, this is weird, but it started to teach me a way of thinking about art and mostly learning how these professors like talk this bullshit language to explain everything is like the postmodern pastiche of this and
bourgeoisie expression.
It's really like just learning a bullshit art language where they can like talk about a movie that's literally just like a shot of a hallway, like a static shot of a hallway that goes on for like an hour. And they'll be able to talk about that for like 5 hours, and where a normal person would be like, dude, it's just a shot of a hallway, and they're like, no, it's the pastiche of the postmodern dialectic and blah 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 blah, and you have to write. And so the whole thing that I learned in art school was you have to learn how to write a paper or something and write their bullshit language and explain this movie that's just a shot of a hallway. Or I think Andy Warhol has a movie that's it's called Empire State Building, and it's just like 5 hours of the Empire State Building. Like,
Well, what I learned from studying and being in front of the camera and now behind the cameras and producing my own shit is you get to make up whatever the fuck you want, and there's your art.
Yeah.
And you get to tax people on that. I had a good friend that spent a bunch of time in Paris. He was a model, he was a stockbroker, he was a model, and then his girlfriend came home with a painting of a heart, and she paid 5,000 francs for it, and he's like, I can fucking do that. And so he started hanging out with all the cigarette smoking, coffee drinking bourgeoisie artists in Paris in the early 90s, and he just became an artist. And
Nice.
he faked it till he could make it. He stole
it's a great racket.
He stole purple velvet ropes from the post office. Remember the post office in
yeah,
Paris?
yeah.
And he would make some kind of fake art and put it in front of the purple rope, and he would rope it off, and then that would be,
His installation.
totally.
That's cool.
And tax people for his ideas. And he was one of the most interesting guys that I had ever met. And that's what I just later on realized is it's whatever I say it is.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, so with that, like, learning that I got from the school, like how to talk their bullshit language and think.
Fashion was like that too. They
Fashion
had their
was
own
like that too.
bullshit language.
So for sure. So but what it did for me when I would eventually, I would do 6 months at school, and then I'd go back and go to Milan, or I'd go to Tokyo, or whatever it was, and I started really noticing and paying attention to what the photographers were doing. I started watching, and I started to get in my head, started noticing a feeling. I was like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I can do this better. I know I'm like a couple of these like more than a couple, a lot of the photographers that you'd work with, you're like, this guy's a fucking idiot. I can do this better. I know I can. And so I ended up, although I wanted to make film, I was like, all right, well, I can do friggin' photography. So I bought a Nikon 35 millimeter film manual camera, and I was in Tokyo with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, let's go to Yoyogi Park, which is like Central Park in Tokyo. It was a beautiful October fall day, crisp, clear, beautiful light. And I was like, let's go there, and I want to try to take some fashion type pictures of you. And so I did these pictures with her, and I got the film back, and I was like, damn, it's pretty good. I mean, granted, like, she was beautiful, and it had beautiful light, and we were in an exotic location, and that's what it is. That's what fashion pictures are. So I was like, I can do this. I think I can do this. And so I was coming to what I thought was going to be more or less the end of my modeling career, and I wanted to. I had graduated. I was about to graduate from UCSD. I graduated. It took me longer because I kept taking breaks and going abroad and being a model. But after like 6 or 7 years or whatever it was, I got my degree, and then I was like, well, I guess I have to move to LA now and try to be a director. And I was still modeling, but I got a room in another, this photographer, this German guy, Daniel Josephson, who, I love that dude. He was a really cool photographer. He died, but he should have been much bigger than he was, because he was really cool guy, super crazy German guy. Anyway, he had a huge house in the Hollywood Hills, and I really looked up to him. I thought he was like so cool, and he had like a cool stylist girlfriend. They lived together, and they lived like practically right underneath the Hollywood sign up in Beechwood Canyon. And I rented a room in his house, and I kind of became his assistant and just his buddy. And so I was learning more about photography from him, and I was in LA, still modeling, but starting to take more pictures, and then I started doing my own like test shoots, because models, when they first start out, like, they need pictures for their book, right? So Maria, that was my agent by this point, she was like,
Maria Manelli?
Maria Manelli.
She was my agent over
Maria's
there
the best.
Omar's men.
Yeah.
She's got her own agency now.
Yeah, Manelli Management.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the best.
Big shout out to Maria.
Hey Maria, what's up? We love you. So Maria started like kicking me some test shoots to do, so I was learning more, like shooting models and getting paid, because they pay you like, the girls or guys would pay you like a couple $100 to do these pictures with them for their books. So I was doing that, and then I kind of fell in with like different people in bands, and started like hanging out in Silver Lake and going to band shows, and then I just I thought this is kind of more interesting than models and like the Hollywood scene, and I just started hanging out more and more with band people. And then I became friends with people like the Beechwood Sparks, the Brian Jonestown Massacre, and Jennifer Harriman from the Royal Trucks. And I started taking pictures of those people, doing pictures for their album covers often, and also with my friend Henry Duarte. Hey Henry, who is a really great fashion designer, but he makes like clothes for rock stars basically. He dressed, at that time he was dressing anyone you can think of in music, like from Guns N' Roses to Bob Dylan to you name it, to Jimmy Page.
Is that someone who's inspired Sun Gods over the years as well?
Yes.
To a certain degree?
Yeah. He not only inspired, he helped me do the nuts and bolts of it, how to get a pattern made, how to like get pants made, how to get anything made. Without Henry, I wouldn't have known how to do any of it.
Because I feel you did a little bit of that for me as I was blowing up on social media. And you're like, hey, you want some of these clothes? And hey, you made me my purple pants and purple shorts. I mean, that was pretty fresh.
Yeah. Well, so Henry was really important in me becoming a photographer in a way, because he was showing me a lot of like, he's like, check out this, he's like all into music stuff. His take is fashion, but from the rock and roll music side. He's like, look at this album cover. Look at this Led Zeppelin cover. Look at this. Look at that. Look at this album. Look at the work of photographers like Henry Diltz, who did like all the cool stuff in LA in the 70s, like with the Eagles, or just all that Laurel Canyon scene. Henry Diltz shot all of that.
So you had some rock and roll influence.
So I was started learning that from him, and then he was providing me cool clothes to dress these music kids in and do shoots with them. And then I met this guy, Bob Richardson. And Bob Richardson was Terry Richardson's dad. And Terry Richardson was, and is, certainly at the time, was a hugely successful photographer, fashion photographer. He was shooting everything at that time. Very controversial, because he was always like, putting himself in the pictures, like naked, showing his dick, having all the models naked, and I think he ultimately got kind of canceled. But
I shot with him back in the 90s in New York.
Did he have you like get naked?
No, he was actually really cool and down to earth, and I don't know, he seemed to like me, and
yeah, he's cool.
Yeah, he's
a cool dude.
He was just cool. I mean, there was no weird nudity or homosexual stuff with him.
But his dad, Bob, was actually kind of cooler. So I met this dude, Bob, who at the time was living in like a really rundown apartment in West Hollywood. In Silver Lake. And he had been, Bob, the reason why Terry is a successful photographer is because Bob Richardson was a huge photographer in the 60s, in the late 60s. He was shooting everything for British Vogue and doing this incredible, really kind of dangerous, seductive black and white photography that was kind of like a precursor to like a Helmut Newton in a way. Anyway, so Bob he had been the boyfriend of Angelica Houston, and he had a really interesting life, but he had become a heroin addict, and then a complete fuck up, and he lost everything. And at this time when I met him, he was rehabilitating himself, and he was actually starting to shoot again. And just on his notoriety, he was getting some big shoots again. And I think he put me in a shoot maybe, or my girlfriend at the time or something. That's how I met him. But anyway, I started hanging out with him, and I showed him my pictures, and he looked at the pictures that I'd done up until that point, and he's like, yeah, these are pretty good. They're not bad, kid, kind of thing. Then he's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do that? Do you want to be a photographer? And I was like, well, yeah, maybe if you think I could do it, I would like to do it. I would try. Yeah, I want to break in if I can. I was like, what should I do? And he's like, well, you shouldn't waste your time here in LA. If you want to hear what I think you should do, I would get on a plane, go to London, and I'm going to make appointments for you to see. In 10 days, you're going to see everybody you need to see in London. And if it clicks with any of these people, you're going to be on your way. If it doesn't, tough shit. You know, it's not going to work out probably. And I was like, okay, deal. Yeah, I'll go to London. I'll do that. I'll take that deal. And he's like, all right, yeah, I'll make the appointments. You go to London, kind of thing. And I was like, sweet. So I booked a ticket. I went to London. I had a piece of paper that he wrote down all these names and numbers on of the people I was going to see.
British Vogue. And
Yeah, like British Vogue, British Elle, the person at British GQ, the dude at the Face, at ID magazine. So I arrive in London and I get a room and I call up Bob and I'm like, hey Bob, it's Sasha. I'm here in London, like you said. I was like, what, have you made any of those appointments yet? When's my first appointment? And he was like, what? And I was like, the appointments that you said you were going to make. And he's like, his mood had changed by this point for whatever reason. And he's like, I've already fucking helped you enough. He's like, I ain't making any appointments. He's like, you got the name and number of everybody. You figure it out. Fuck you. Basically, like, fuck you, goodbye. And like, I was like, holy shit. I've been totally kind of like hoodwinked and kind of like tricked. I've flown to London. I spent this money. Here I am. And then the guy, he's not even going to do what he said. He just told me to get fucked. And like, he's not going to make any of my appointments. And I was like, almost going to like have a panic attack or start crying or something. I was like 27 or 28 at this time. And, and then I was like, you know what? No, get it together, talking to myself. He's right. You've got the names, you've got the numbers. That should be enough. I was like, I'm not friggin' leaving London until I've seen every single one of these people on this list.
It was like a sink or swim.
It was a sink or swim moment.
You wanted to cry.
Yeah.
And then you just got your big boy pants on.
I was really confident in a way at that time because I was still pretty good looking and I was still like, I think I was pretty cool. So I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm as cool as any of these people.
I'm Sasha Eisenman.
I'm friggin' Sasha. I'm gonna see these people. God damn it. So I called.
Did you consider yourself a good photographer at the time?
Yeah, I knew I was good, but I knew that being good wasn't good enough. Like it was going to take way more than just being good to get in the door. I knew that I liked my pictures. I could tell my pictures were special and they were good, and they were like my pictures looked like they were straight out of like the 70s. They looked like they were straight out of like 70s rock and roll album or like the 70s Playboy magazine or something. They were like.
But you needed to be a character, a je ne sais quoi. You needed to have some kind of something.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So I started making all these phone calls and just getting like, the person's assistant, and I'm like, hey, I'm Sasha Eisenman. Bob Richardson told me that I'm supposed to see Terry Jones, like calling Terry Jones at ID, and they're like, well, Terry's not in right now. Can I take a message? And I said, well, actually, Terry's aware of that I'm going to be calling because Bob's spoken with Terry, and he's actually expecting my call. So can you please put me through to Terry? Like that kind of thing. And I did that with everybody. And eventually, I actually got to speak with all these people, and they actually, based on me dropping Bob's name a million times, they were like, well, maybe we should see him. And then they actually spent the time to have me come to the office, and I got to see everyone and show them my book, my portfolio, my work thus far, and it actually went pretty well. And
how long of a time period? Like a week or two?
Yeah, a couple weeks.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I'm here to tell you guys, it ain't easy.
It's not
Going
easy.
from model to photographer ain't easy, and you better have some good photography, and then being able to get those appointments and travel around the city like that before cell phones and all that stuff. I mean,
like running around on the tube and from the tube to this bus and trying to make your way out to friggin' Shoreditch or to Hanover Square. And, London's a rough town anyway. But anyway, so I did get in to see all these people.
Expensive as well.
And expensive, yeah, friggin' expensive. So I got in to see everybody, and it went well with everybody, but it went particularly well with a woman named Emma Reeves, who I have to big shout out. Emma, I haven't seen Emma in years, but if you're watching, hi. Anyway, so Emma Reeves was the photo director at Dazed and Confused magazine, which at the time Dazed, well, actually, it still is a really big deal. But Dazed was a newer magazine in the vein of like The Face or ID, which The Face and ID are like were the preeminent avant-garde British fashion magazines, which all the big fashion magazines like the Vogues and everything actually copied what would happen in The Face or ID. Vogue would copy what The Face did or what ID did. And Dazed came along, and Dazed was kind of born out of both of those magazines and was doing that as well. And so I got in to see Emma, and she really loved these pictures, especially pictures I did with this friend of mine, Rex. And Rex was this like, he back home in LA, Rex was kind of like the ace face, king of the scene, king of the scenester, cool kids, music scene in Silver Lake. He was this 6'4" Adonis dude, but like looked like himself straight out of '70s. He had well, at that time he had like a kind of a Prince Valiant hair. He had like this Prince Valiant kind of haircut when I first met him, but I had convinced him to grow this big mustache for the shoot that I wanted to do. So he'd grown this big mustache, which eventually became his like signature thing. So he looked like a cross between like some kind of dude from like Foghat or like one of these killer 70s rock bands mixed with like a porn star mixed with like Clint Eastwood or something. He was just friggin' stud, freak of nature dude. He was on his way to becoming a professional tennis player when he was a young guy, and just a physical powerhouse, like a real athlete. But he
became one of your muses.
He became my muse. We ended up becoming best buddies, but he was like my muse more or less. I put him in all my shoots. He was, I was kind of like inspired by movie directors, like how Federico Fellini would put Marcello Mastroianni in all of his movies. Every Fellini movie, Marcello basically plays Fellini. So I had Rex basically playing me in my photo shoots. Essentially, I cast him as me in the shoot, sort of like, and so he was my muse that I put in all my shoots. So I did this one shoot with him and some other people at the beach, and Emma saw those pictures and she was like, "This is great. This guy is amazing. Who is this guy?" And I was like, "He's Rex. He's just awesome, And she's like, "I want you to go. Here's what we're gonna do. Go back to LA. I'm gonna send you a box of clothes. We're gonna send you like, whatever it was, like all this fashion shit. And do this shoot again with this guy and these girls and these same people, get them again, but dress them in these clothes, and we think that's going to be great." And I was like, "Done, cool, yeah, all right." So I was like, went out back to LA. I'm like, "Hey Rex, guess what? I need you. We're going to do a shoot for this British magazine. Like, I even got a little bit of money. I give you, 100, maybe $100 or something. You can buy, more party treats." And Rex never met a drug he didn't like, and he never ever stopped partying with you. And at that time, he was just like indestructible. He could do any amount of partying, any amount of drinking, any amount of drugging, and it had no effect on the guy. He would just look like he walked out of like the gym every morning. He was like so fit. So he had incredible DNA apparently, but
I knew guys like that.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
And they're dead now too.
And
by the way,
and he's dead. Yeah, he's dead. But at that time, it seemed like he was indestructible. Anyway, so we do the shoot for Dazed. It goes, pictures look great. Send them the film, and Emma, they love it, and lo and behold, they put it on the friggin' cover. I get a cover of Dazed and Confused, which is like almost like as big of a deal as shooting with Bruce Weber as a model. So getting the cover of Dazed is like photographers trying to break into photography would themselves crawl over broken glass to get the cover of Dazed. But then I got it like out of the gates. And then they let me do another shoot for them. Actually, I think they let me do a couple of the shoots. One of the early shoots they let me do was they're like, "We want you to go and shoot with this guy called Rick Rubin." And I was like, "Okay, Rick Rubin." I kind of knew the name, but I didn't really know who he was. And they're like, "He's a music producer. He's really cool. He likes like the '70s like you do. You'll get along." So I go to Rick Rubin's house, and we do this. I meet Rick, and he's got this enormous taxidermy polar bear in his living room. And I thought, oh, this is cool. Yeah, and he's got a big white beard. And I'm like, I'll get Rick like sitting under the polar bear, and yeah, I can do this. This is just like rock photography, and he is Mr. Music as it turns out.
Hip hop icon,
Yeah,
everything now.
So we do these. I do these pictures with Rick, and like while we're taking pictures, he gets some kind of message, and he's like, oh, somebody's here. Can you just wait a minute? I gotta talk to this person. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I go out on the balcony, and then the person arrives that he had to talk to, and I thought it was going to be like, like the guy bringing him his lunch or something, but it's friggin' Bono from U2, and Bono comes in, and he's like, oh, hello, and I was like, is that fucking Bono? and then Bono comes over to me, and he's like, how's it going? And he's like, oh, you're a photographer? Oh, you're doing pictures with Rick? Oh, cool. He's like, hey, do you have a fag? And I'm like, a cigarette? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, Bono smokes? I'm like, yeah, here you go, Bono. I give him because at the time I was smoking. Models smoke, photographers smoke. So I give him a cigarette, and I light a cigarette, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. Like I'm lighting Bono's cigarette, and he's like, cheers, mate. And like he goes and talks with Rick, and then like I'm standing around out on the balcony, like looking over LA, smoking a cigarette, thinking, you know what? I can do this. I can do this photography thing. I'm 28 years old, thinking I'm pretty hot shit, and do these pictures with Rick. They put that in the magazine. Then they give me another shoot. I get another cover of Dazed. Emma Reeves was really digging what I was doing, and she liked me and everything. And so then she's like, why don't you come back to London, and I'll introduce you to some of the agents here. And so I go back to London not that long after all of this, and then she shops me around the same way Omar had shopped me around as a model. She shopped me around to like some of these big photo agents that were in London at the time, and I met several really cool people, really cool big time agents. But I met this one woman, Katie Barker, and she was like straight out of like a Bond movie, really super sexy woman. I don't know how old she was, but she was hot, blonde, big tits, dressed in like, incredible fashion, really sexy, really just like this powerhouse woman. And she immediately liked me. And, because I was still young. I was 28. I was still looked basically like a model. You'll have to cut in some of my pictures from back then, so people know what I used to look like. It wasn't this. Anyway, so she's digging me. She's like, you want to be with the Katie Barker agency, do you? And I said, well, yeah, I would, Katie. I would like to be with your agency. And she's like, well, you're not going to live in LA, that's for sure. And I was like, really? And she's like, no. If you want to be with Katie Barker, you're going to be in Paris, London, or New York. And I was like, she's like, take your pick. And I was like, well, does that mean you're taking me on? She's like, that is what that means. You are now with the Katie Barker agency or something. She's like, we're gonna make you famous, kid. Basically, is what she said. And my head was spinning because I was just like, no fucking way. Because they had Katie Barker at the time. They had Terry Richardson. They had David Sims. They had all the biggest names in fashion, basically. And they had offices in Paris, New York, London. They were like, it was huge. And like, yeah, part of it was probably like, I don't know, maybe Katie wanted to sleep with me. I don't know. There was certainly a lot of, in all of these interactions, there's a lot of flirtation.
Sexual tension.
Sexual flirtation is big part of it. You have to be able to do that and play that card. If you want to, you're not going to get there otherwise. And I mean, you're probably not going to get there at that time just being some like ugly, chubby dude. Like being good looking, whether you were a girl or a guy, it really helps.
Unless you're a homosexual agent and you're the gatekeeper for the male models. Now I saw that happen.
Right. Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, that dude can look like Jabba the Hutt. But and often did. Anyway, so I was off to the races. I was with Katie Barker, and they started getting me shoots. And immediately, like, somehow, based on my Dazed and Confused shoots, like, I got a really cool art director from Germany booked me to do the H&M ad campaign, and that was a huge deal because that was big money, big shoot right out of the gates. I was back in LA shooting H&M worldwide campaign, and I don't remember how much I was being paid, but a lot, like, I don't know, like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. I don't remember, but it was something like that, and it was like. A crew of like 100 people, and I'm like 28 years old directing all these people, and it's a lot of pressure, and so you're having, the environment is always like kind of like a party anyway, so I was always kind of drinking, but this really started ratcheting up my drinking, because you start drinking because it is a party, but also you're drinking because you needed to kind of like cool your nerves, because if you start thinking about what's going on around you and all of these people depending on you, you could crack up kind of fairly quickly.
Lots of money, lots of responsibility,
yeah,
lots of fabulousness, lots of
tons of fabulousness, and and everybody else is partying, and you kind of want to be part of the party, and so the party thing was starting to ramp up, and so we did H&M. That was a big deal, and then I got to do this shoot that ended up being really fortuitous because. Some of the connections that I made on this shoot, but there was a magazine at the time called Jane Magazine, which was this woman Jane who had been an editor at, I forget which other magazine, I think she was at Harper's Bazaar, and then she started her own magazine in New York called Jane Magazine. It was kind of like Elle or Glamour Magazine or one of those, but it was like a cool women's fashion magazine at the time, and they picked me up from Katie Barker, and they were like, oh, he's the new Katie Barker guy, she just shot this and he just shot that, let's have him do fashion for Jane. And they saw my book and my work, and they were like, oh, we love this like 60s, 70s rock and roll thing, and this really ties into something that we wanted to do. We want to do a shoot with like the Daughters of Rock. I remember they said to me at the office in New York when I'm having the meeting, I'm like, the Daughters of Rock, like what the hell's that? And they're like, oh, well, turns out that all these various rock stars had at that time young daughters that were coming of age that were quite attractive. Most of their moms were models, and they themselves were looking to get into modeling, or people were wanting to photograph them, and they had a whole list. And they're like, we want to do a shoot. You choose. You can have like India Waters. She's like Roger Waters' daughter, I guess, or I think Rod Stewart's daughter was on the list, and some other people's daughters were on the list, and when one of the people on the list was Elizabeth Jagger, and I was like, Jagger? Well, if I'm gonna pick from this list, I'll pick a Jagger. I'll go with the Rolling Stones girl, And so I picked Elizabeth Jagger, and I didn't know it then, but we became great friends. Anyway, so we go to San Francisco to do this shoot. They send us, and my idea was like, let's do a shoot around Haight-Ashbury, like Summer of Love, 1968, Haight-Ashbury, and Lizzie's gonna be like the main star of the shoot because that's what the magazine wanted, but I'm gonna put around her a cast of characters of actual real music world people. So I got Anton from the Brian Jonestown Massacre to be in the shoot. You can look it up. He's dressed in a rabbit outfit in the shoot, and I've got Rex in there as being the just uber cool Rex guy. I had Donovan Frankenreiter, who's a professional surfer who actually looked kind of just like Rex. Those two like butted heads. They didn't like each other. He's in the shoot too. He's dressed like a wizard. And and I got Jennifer Harima from the Royal Trucks.
It was like Beggar's Banquet, or
it's like yeah. It was a whole cast of characters. And I got Jennifer Harima, who's like the cool. If you look up the Royal Trucks, Jennifer Harima, she's like a style icon herself. She'd been in the Calvin Klein ads when they did that CK1 ads that Steven Meisel shot. She's just like super cool rock chick. Like, so she was in the shoot too, and because I knew all these people, or I knew people that knew them, and so I was able to get them to do the shoot. Because normally, like somebody like Jennifer Harima or Anton, or probably if you said like, "Hey, you want to be in a fashion shoot?" They'd be like, "No, we're not doing that." Like, not unless they pay us a bunch. But because it was me asking, when I was friends with all of them, they were all like, "Oh yeah, it sounds like fun. It'll be like a party with Sasha in San Francisco," And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what it was. So we get to San Francisco. We're doing the shoot, and it started raining, like pouring rain, and we're all, the Jane magazine's got us all staying in, I forget the name of the hotel, but it was a super new, modern, swanky, beautiful hotel in San Francisco somewhere, and like a really high dollar, fashiony, styly hotel. And they've got all of us in this hotel. It started to rain, and we're there with the fashion editor from the magazine. She's our only supervision, this woman, Susan Cannon. Hey, Susan. She's so sweet. But so it started to rain, and I'm like, Susan, what should we do? It's raining. And she's like, well, I was like, do you want to do the pictures in the rain? She's like, no, let's look at the weather forecast. And we're like, okay, it's going to stop raining in 2 days' time. So the magazine will take a hit on the budget because we're going to have to stay longer here in the hotel and everything. But let's just wait the rain out, and then it's going to be sunny, and we're going to have beautiful weather, and we'll do the shoot. So I was like, yeah, sounds good. Let's do that. And but meanwhile, I've got this cast of characters in this hotel, and just a 2-day bender ensues where we're all just like partying from room to room with like Liz, and we're in Lizzie Jagger's room, or we're with Rex, and actually I don't know what I was supposed to say, but Rex and Lizzie like actually had a cool little romance happen on that shoot, and then with Jennifer and all of these people, and we just started partying, and it was a party that lasted for like 3 days until we finally started shooting again. And then we did the shoot, and it was great, and the pictures turned out great. But I remember when we wrapped like 5 days later, and after like many huge dinners at the hotel, where like Anton invited all of his Brian Jonestown friends, and various people from around San Francisco came and joined these dinners, where the lady from the magazine, I think she wasn't feeling well, and she was like, you just take everyone to dinner, you deal with it, I trust you. So
the bills were like $7,000.
Dude, more. so yeah. We finally, when we're checking out of the hotel, and I'm a little worried. I'm like, what kind of bill is she gonna get? You know, she gets the bill, and I think the total bill was nearly $200,000 coming out of this hotel, and she was about to cry. She was crying, I think. And I remember Lizzie Jagger had a minibar charge. Her minibar charge from her room was $7,000, just for the minibar charge. And
rock and roll royalty knows no price.
And yeah, and I was thinking, you know, I was like, holy shit, am I in big trouble, or is this going to be okay? And the woman's like in tears, practically. I'm like, Susan, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry things got a little out of hand, you know. And she's like, it's okay. Let's just hope the pictures are really good, and it'll be fine, you know. And so it turns out the film was amazing. It looked great. It looked like it was shot like in that time. Everything looked like an album cover, and they rebranded in the magazine. They gave it like 16 pages, or like nearly 20 pages, like something unheard of, like a huge story. And that really gave me a bunch more momentum. But then I remember thinking like, holy shit, like I'm really doing it now. I'm off to, and I was thinking like, this is how it's just going to be from now on. Like every shoot's going to be like this. I was like thinking like, we're going to have like 7,000 minibar charges are going to be the norm, you know. But I mean, it turned out that wasn't the case. But yeah, I had a really cool feeling at that time. I was just like, wow, this is going to be great, you know. And then I really started a really good relationship with Lizzie, and we ended up becoming good friends. And then I needed to go and spend time in. Okay, so I developed a really good relationship with Lizzie Jagger, and I needed to go and spend time in Paris, and it was it was Fashion Week and during the shows, and it's kind of important to be at these Fashion Week events because as a photographer, you meet everyone. There's the shows, but then there's the parties at night. You know, you go to whatever it is, the Gautier party or this party or that party, and all the editors are there. So it's important to make those rounds if you really want to be like a happening dude in the photography world. So Lizzie was nice enough. She's like, I'm going to be in Paris. Why don't you come and stay with me in Paris, and you can do your appointments that you need to do. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, yeah. So I arrived in Paris, and I didn't really ask or know where we were going to be staying. But it turns out that we were staying at her dad's, at Mick's, his pied-à-terre in Paris, which was basically an entire whole city block floor of this beautiful, like 17th century building, like this gorgeous.
Above the Louvre on the Champs-Élysées
It was,
or something?
yeah, it was. That's exactly where it was. It was right. It was right. It was right there. I remember the metro stop. The metro stop was Rue des Arts. Rue des Arts is where you got off. And anyway, so I brought Rex with me because Rex was like
Your muse.
he was my muse, and it just made it easier for me. It was kind of like, you know how Han Solo goes around with Chewbacca, right?
Yeah.
Rex was like my Wookiee. Like I brought this like big 6'4".
Barbaro's my Wookiee right now.
I brought this big 6'4" long-haired Adonis with me everywhere, and that kind of even just made my whole vibe that much better, and really like was quite a striking entrance wherever you went. And plus I would put him in the shoes, and he was just, by that point we were just bros, we were good buddies, and like it was just fun. Like, why I'm not gonna go by myself. But I didn't know we were staying at Mick's place, and we arrived, and Lizzie told me that I could stay, but Rex couldn't for whatever reason. Rex couldn't stay there, and I was like, oh shit. So I called up my buddy Bruno, this dude who I'd been friends with from when I was a model in Paris. I'm like, hey, can my buddy crash at your place? And he's like, yeah, no, bien sûr, yeah, no problem. Yeah, he can come. So Rex was crashing at my friend's place, and I'm staying with Lizzie at Mick's place. And initially Mick was there, and we went to a couple dinners with him, and it was like, and I don't even really remember, but it was like really crazy, like tons of models, Lizzie, and her friend at the time was this girl, Deb. Do you remember Devin Aoki? She had a big moment in modeling at that time, and she's the daughter of her brother is it Steve Aoki, is a big DJ at the time. Her dad is the guy that started Benihana.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And she's like part Japanese. She's really beautiful. Anyway, she was a big model. She was there. She is Lizzie's buddy, and we went to all these crazy dinners with Mick and stuff, and then I even went to like strip clubs with Mick, and I remember we went to this one place, and again, like Mick's bouncers said, like, you can sit with Mick, but Rex can't. For some reason, and that was never explained to me, Mick immediately was like, not him. Like, he didn't want Rex around, and Rex was just excluded. I don't know why. Maybe he wasn't.
Maybe he was 6'4" and Mick was 5'6".
Yeah, it might have been that, or it might have just been like he just sensed that this guy's like just like a street hustler or something, and I don't want him around. Whatever it was, but it was like Rex can be there, Rex can be at the bar, but he's not coming and sitting at the table with Mick. But for some reason, I was allowed to sit at the table with Mick, and I was just like, all right, it's kind of weird. But I was like, bro, I'm sorry, like, do you mind? And he was like, whatever, man. The Rolling Stones are pants anyway. Like, I never dug that band, man. It's square. Like, yeah, go ahead, go sit with Mick, whatever. That's how Rex talked. And I was like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I'll get you drinks. And he's like, no, that's cool, man. I'm chatting up this French bird over here anyway, man. I don't need to sit with you cats. And so we're spending all these nights, really wild time. And eventually Lizzie needs to leave town. And she leaves, and Mick leaves, and they're leaving, and I'm like, oh, so do I need to leave? Do I need to leave the place too? And Lizzie's like, no, it's fine. You can stay. Like, Devin's staying, and a couple other people, because there was, I don't know how many rooms this place had. It was like tons of rooms. It was huge. I had no idea. So she said, no, Devin's staying. You can stay too. So I'm like, all right, I'll just stay at Mick's place then. And so they've all left town, and we're still in Paris for like another week. And I've just been instructed, like, you can stay here, but don't have people coming over or anything like that. And so I'm there with Devin, and Devin is starting to like. I'm coming home at night, and she's having like full on parties back at Mick's place, and she was running around with this like kind of like a hip hop crowd, and there's like all these like American black hip hop dudes there, and I think like people like Usher, and like I don't know hip hop, but I just kind of recognize them. They're like big dudes in hip hop, and they're all partying at Mick's place, and he's not there. And I'm thinking like, and I'm just going about my business because I haven't been out all night, and I'm coming back, and there's like all these hip hop dudes partying at Mick's place, and I'm like, this doesn't seem good. This seems like this isn't gonna end good, you know. But I was like, I didn't know. I'm like, all right, you know, Devin's friends with all of them, so I guess she knows what she's doing. And meanwhile, there was nobody at the house besides us, and there was like a French Moroccan cleaning lady that would clean up after these parties and stuff. And I didn't partake in the parties, but anyway, so one morning, I think there were a couple other model girls staying there too. One morning the phone's ringing in all the rooms, and it's like bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, 7 in the morning, like fully hungover after having, just gotten home at 5 or something. And, ignoring the phone. And then I think Devin or one of the other models comes into my room, and she's like, Sasha, it's the phone for you. And I'm like, well, who is it? She's like, it's Mick. And I'm like, what? She's like, it's Mick. And I was like, he wants to talk to me? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, fuck. And I'm like super hungover, half asleep. I like grab a glass of water to drink the water. I come to the phone. I'm like, hello? And he's like, hello? Is that Sasha? And I said, oh, yeah. Hey, Mick. He's like, hey, Sasha, how you going? I'm like, I'm doing all right. How are you? And he's like, well, I'm all right, Sasha. I'm all right. He's like, well, the reason I'm calling is, you see, the cleaning ladies rang up, and she says you've been having parties there at my place. And that's just not cool, Sasha. It's not cool at all. I can't have that sort of thing going on there. I just can't have it. And I was like, oh, Mick, I'm really sorry, but I haven't had any parties here, I swear. And he's like, well, she's been quite precise about it. She says that you have. And you've been kind of running a party thing there. And I was like, and I didn't want to throw Devin under the bus entirely, but I was like, Mick, I'm really sorry, but honestly, I haven't had anyone back here. I was like, I think maybe Devin might have had a few people here. But he's like, look, both of you are going to have to clear out of there because I'm coming into town tonight with a group of people, and you guys need to clear out. I'm like, oh man, yeah, no, we'll be out of here. I'm so sorry. And I was like, got off the phone. I was like, fuck. Now Mick Jagger's pissed at me. I'm like, I'm like, Devin. Well, she came in. I'm like, you fucked up. You're like, Mick thinks that I've had parties here. Now I'm thinking like, fuck. Now like, my whole like Mick Jagger connection is blown. I'm like, Mick's all mad at me. And I remember I wrote him like a nice note and left it in his office with like money for the phone calls that I'd made. I'm like, I left him like $50. I was like, dear Mick, so sorry. And do we need to wrap? Do we need to?
Yeah, just keep going because we want to get into the sun gods and your fashion endeavors now.
Yeah. Anyway,
so what year is this?
So this is like 2002. Or 2000. Yeah, 2002.
So it's still in the beginning of your.
Still in the beginning of my career. That's what we've got so much more to talk about.
Photography career.
So anyway, what the photography career ended up being is just like these kind of stories.
What happened with Mick? Did you patch everything up?
So yeah. So I thought, gee shucks, Mick hates me. This sucks. I'm super bummed. And then I kind of lost touch with Lizzie a little bit for a while. And then I was in Miami doing a shoot, and my phone rings, and this woman's like, "Hello, this is so and so from the offices of Mick Jagger. Mick would like you to come to London to photograph Elizabeth's, I think."
Was that 2 years later? 1 year later?
Like maybe a year later, maybe a year. Photograph Elizabeth's, I don't know if it's her 18th birthday or 21st birthday, some birthday like that. And they're like, we need you to be in London, I think it was like the next day or that night or something.
So everything got kind of patched up.
And I was like, I guess Mick's not mad at me, And I was like, sweet. So they sent me a ticket. I had to fly to London. I had to sign this contract with them that I wouldn't own any of the pictures, and they would get all the film afterwards, which was a real bummer because this party turned out to be absolutely amazing, and it was like just a who's who of everybody in the music world. Like anyone you could think of was there. Like people like Prince, people like Madonna, people like friggin' like Jimmy Page, or I don't even know who.
So you had a rock and roll career. And
Totally.
that went through the 2000s.
Yeah.
I want to bring it up to the modern day because the iPhones came out around 2008, and I know that Kodak stock tanked in about 2011. And being a fashion photographer, I mean, that was iconic. You had to have a je ne sais quoi, a little bit about lighting, angles, art direction.
Yeah.
And now with the advent of the phones and digital photography, a lot of that got replaced. And so your career started to go down a little bit.
It wasn't so much that my career started to go down. What happened was the industry started to go down.
Shift.
The entire industry started to change, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall. Like suddenly, like we said, when the people had the phones, suddenly everyone was a photographer. And when I first started, I remember going around, telling people, like, they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm a photographer. I'm trying to be a photographer. Or people would be like, a photographer? Huh. And I'd be like, that was like, not like, oh, it wasn't like a common thing. Like, oh, you're a photographer. Okay. Now,
so
everyone
the
is.
industry started to change. You
Yeah.
partied quite a bit. It was hard to slow that down. So why
So-
don't you bring it back to kind of how we met and bring it back to the
I'm getting
surfing.
there. I'm getting there.
I got another podcast to do in
I'm getting there.
15 minutes. In La Jolla.
We're getting there. But yeah, so it was like basically the photography thing was like a 20-year party, and it was just really wild. It was like being.
So you had a 25, 30-year fashion career between modeling and photography?
Yeah, 30-year career.
30-year career.
Yeah,
Wow.
30-year between the two. Yeah, pretty much.
And at one point, did you start wanting to sober up, or what was?
So what was happening was when I was younger, I could go out all night and be at these parties all night, and then the next day go and do a shoot and still be fine, or go and do appointments and be fine. But as I got older and I got into my mid and later 30s, that's your body starts to slow down, and just the wear and tear from all the late nights and all the friggin' cigarettes and all the fucking drinking. Fortunately, I never got heavy into drugs. I didn't really do a lot of drugs, or I would be dead. I would be dead. It was just, for me, it was drinking and cigarettes with the drinks. But that really starts to catch up with you, and it started to really take a toll, and I remember just not being able to avoiding going to meetings because I was too hungover, or not even wanting to go to Paris because I was like, oh, I can't do another season of fashion.
So let's speed that up to where social media is now a thing. We met 2019.
So let me just get me out. So at this point, I'm still living in LA. I bought a house in Silver Lake, and I've been through towards the end of my career, I had this really rocky relationship with a really amazing, beautiful model girl who turned out to just be a complete disaster for me, because she ended up breaking my heart, and kind of her career was taking off as a model, and it was just like a feeding frenzy happened around this girl, where every magazine editor, every creepy actor, every creepy photographer was trying to get to this girl, and I was basically in the way of all that. And so it just kind of ended up having.
So you went from the darling of the fashion industry to the leper of the
kind of, yeah, because they were
which it can turn on you, right? You can be fabulous one day, and then oh no.
Yeah, and it was like that because certain magazines that I worked with, who were in with certain photographers who wanted my girl, suddenly they were like, we got to get Sasha out of the picture, and I was blacklisted from other magazines and stuff. I mean, it's really, I'm just grazing over this subject, but anyway, long story short.
Well, we're gonna have you back on the show, just so you know. We'll continue this show. It'll be rock and roll photography stories with Sasha. We will have you back on there. So tie that all together, tie our relationship, and let's talk about the song.
So anyways, that relationship collapsed. after that, I was just like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done with dating models. I don't want to know actresses. I don't want to hang around with these people anymore. I want to just be with like a normal girl. And I ended up meeting a really great girl from Japan who's now my wife, and we had a child. Our daughter was born in 2016, and that summer it was roasting hot in LA. So I was just like, you know what? Let's get out of LA. Let's do like Europeans do. Let's go. And I knew about San Diego. Let's go to North County, San Diego, and get back to surfing, get back to those roots. And so I rented a condo down here in this area in Encinitas, and we spent the summer of 2016 down here. And after that summer, I was like, you know what? We're not going back. And I'm like, I'm going to sell the house in LA. And not only that, I'm like, I don't want to be a photographer anymore. I don't want to do any of this anymore. I just want to get back to surfing, and I just want to be here in this really magical little zone that we're in here in North County, San Diego. And that's exactly what I did. And I was only able to do that because luckily I bought properties in Joshua Tree while I was a photographer. And not because I thought I was making great investments, just because I liked Joshua Tree, and they turned out to be great investments because now
Luck of the Irish one
yeah.
more time, Sasha Eisenman.
I'm actually half Scottish. I'm half Jewish, half Scottish. Luck of the Scottish. Or the Hebrew, who knows? But some kind of luck. Anyway, so I bought these properties. They became successful Airbnbs. It allowed me to leave photography behind entirely, and nobody would do that actually at that point because my career was still happening. I still had a contract with Playboy magazine. I was shooting covers and centerfolds for Playboy. I was at the Playboy Mansion. I knew Hugh Hefner. I was still pretty happening, but I was done. I was like, I want my health back. I want my surfing back. I don't want to know any. I don't want to have to keep my mouth shut about certain things. I don't want to have to, kiss ass to these editors and people. I just want to be a surfer again. So we came down here. I sold my house in LA. I was able to from that to buy a house here in La Costa, which is another great area, just right next to Encinitas here, and got a house here. Just 10 minutes from the beach, and just started to just get back into surfing and just make up for all the lost time that I'd lost in the water by being away in Paris or London or these places where for 20, 30 years where I wasn't only surfing infrequently, and now I'm just surfing all the time. And then I was like, you know what, I want to do something out of this. And I always had this idea. I really liked shorter shorts, and like how shorts were for men in like the late 70s, early 80s when you had shorts like OP, Hang 10, Lightning Bolt. I always liked that kind of style.
Town and country.
Yeah, and you couldn't really find a shorter short. So I was like, I should do surfwear shorts for men that are
OP.
that are kind of like OPs, and then I had this idea that I would call it Sun Gods with a Z, kind of like Jimmy Z's, which was a big brand in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that name came from, remember one day we, flashback 20 years prior, Rex and I were going to a party in the Hollywood Hills, and a daytime pool party. We showed up at the door in Bel Air, and this girl answered the door, and we were going to our friend Amanda's house, and the girl answered the door, and she said, she looked at the two of us. We were like tanned. I think we were just in shorts, long hair. She's like, Amanda, there's a couple of sun gods at the door here. And that always stuck with me. Like, Amanda, there's a couple of sun gods at the door here for you. And I was like, sun gods, that's a great name. And that's where the name Sun Gods came from. And so anyway, I started making actual shorts and pants based on stuff that I wanted to wear, that I liked, and I used my contacts with people like Henry Duarte who knew how to get things made. I'm like, hey, I want to make a short like this Lightning Bolt short, or I want to make a pant like these vintage stubbies that I have. And so I started doing that, and then I started putting those clothes on cool surfer kids around here, taking pictures of them. Kind of got a little following in the local surf community here. And then I was having a hard time with my own health and weight. Really. Go on, have some water.
Oh, dude, sorry, man.
Go ahead.
So I was having a hard time with my own health and my weight in particular, and I thought I was eating healthy, but I was eating like, lots of vegetables and good, and what I thought was good meat, fish and stuff, and not a lot of carbs. But I was drinking a lot, as always, and I was getting older, so I packed on a lot of weight. And I was getting pretty bummed about it because I wasn't able to surf properly because I'd gotten so heavy, and then I'd injured my shoulder from that. And I was struggling with that, and someone told me about Mr. Troy Casey. And he was like, actually, it was my friend Roman Barrett, who I knew from modeling. Roman was like, you should reach out to Troy, man. Troy could help you with your deal, your whole thing that you're into, and you'll dig Troy. He's like super based like you are. You guys will hit it off. And then he sent me your profile, and I was like, oh shit, I think I kind of remember this guy. I think I remember seeing his picture when on those first tours in Milan, or
Tokyo,
or Tokyo, or I saw, or maybe I saw him at castings or a party or something. But I was like, I recognize him. Anyway, so I was like, at the time, I was like pushing 250 pounds or something, to getting up there. I was big. I mean, I'm pretty big right now. Again, I fell off the wagon here, so we'll get into that. But anyway, so I reached out to Troy, and I sent him some pictures of myself, just like standing there in my boxers, no shirt on, with my big stomach, and I'm like, hey, dude, I heard you know how to deal with stuff like this. Like, check out these pictures. Like, what's going on with me? I'm trying to, I exercise a lot. I think I eat good, but I can't lose weight. I'm just all fucked up. And he wrote me back, which was so cool. And he's like, bro, I'm looking at your pictures, and he's like, it's not about that it's not like a fat thing. He's like, actually, what I'm looking at is just a ton of inflammation. He's like, your body, I can tell just by looking at these pictures, your body's completely inflamed. And I was like, inflammation? Like, okay, like, what's that? And he's like, look, we're going to get you on the ultimate lifestyle transformation. We're going to get you on the Purium product. You got to follow how to do this and the way to do it. But if you follow what I say, I'm gonna change things for you.
I'm gonna take you to the promised land.
Yeah. And I was like, I was desperate at this point, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do what this dude says. And so I got the Purium product, and I got on the program, and I did it really strictly. I wasn't eating anything except those green juice smoothies and some organic olives, I think, and blueberries.
And we got you to lower your stress levels with the qigong and stuff for your shoulder.
The breathing, the qigong. I got really into the Zen swing and the whole thing, and like I'm out there like, and it ties into surfing so perfectly because as a surfer, we stretch before we surf, so why not do a little qigong too to get the Zen swing going, do the stretch, like sun gaze. Before you get in the water, it all connects. So I got really into it, and in like a month, I dropped like 20, if not like 30 pounds, and I was like, well, this is too good. I'm not going to stop. And I did another month, and all in all, I ended up losing like over 50 pounds, and I think I got down to almost like 100. Like 178 pounds. I might have lost like 60 pounds. I got down to 100. I remember I got down to like 178 pounds. And I remember the moment I got below 200 pounds. I hadn't been below 200 pounds in like a decade or something. And I was like, holy shit. No, I'm 6'2". I'm a big guy, but I was too heavy. And anyway, he got me down to like 178 pounds, and my surfing took off because suddenly I'm back at this weight that I hadn't been at in forever, and I could ride all the smaller boards that I wanted to ride. I could pop up easy. I could do everything that I knew in my brain and my vision. I could visualize that I wanted to do. I could hit the lip the way I wanted to hit. I could bring that roundhouse cut back all the way back, hit the whitewater, whack, whack, whack down the line, and it was just awesome. And I was like loving life, and so then that brought me into this connection with Troy, and then I started sending him.
Making me clothes.
I started sending him my Sun God stuff because I'm like, dude, you should check out what I'm doing, and it just he dug it, and it's actually like a natural tie-in because the pants that he's wearing are super comfy, and that's what I made them for, like a comfy beach jam pant, like for after surfing, going surfing. But they also, you could do yoga in them, you can do qigong in them, and the shorts too. It just
Active wear. Well, I go dancing ecstatic dance in Sedona.
Yeah, but I wanted to make stuff that was like functionally comfy, but also stylish. From my fashion background, I like color. I love color. I want to bring back color. So I wanted to make colorful stuff. I don't like dreary taupes and grays and boring colors. I like bold color, and it just makes my eyeballs happy to see color. So anyway, now we're doing a new run of stuff.
We've got a new collaboration, Certified Health Nut and Sun
This
Gods.
this is a custom print that we've made that has embedded in this kind of artwork. You'll see if you look closely, there's like a little Troy in there, and there's like a certified acorn in there, health nut it says, and then there's like little sun gods and stuff. And my buddy Barney Cook, who's a really great artist in London, I collaborated with him on this, and he came up with this design. He goes by Frisco Arts on Instagram. Anyway, really great artist, and we've done this custom print, and so we're going to have these 4 different colorways:
pants,
shorts,
and bucket hats.
Probably we'll do some bucket hats.
Look at that bucket hat.
Probably do like a bucket hat. I want to do a boonie hat, if you know what a boonie, kind of like a military boonie hat that you could wear in the water for surfing as well, like with a strap so it doesn't come off when you're in the water, and some other things. So that's what we're working on. And
so coming full circle, I started my modeling career in San Diego.
That's wild.
Nina Blanchard from Los Angeles moved down here while I was going to school. I went back to East Coast for the summer, took some photographs. My dad knew somebody in New York, and then I went to Wilhelmina. They said, our sister agency is, you're not living in New York, so why don't you check out our sister agency in LA. I called Nina Blanchard in LA. They were moving down to San Diego. San Diego is becoming a hotspot for German catalogs to be shot, like Miami.
Yeah.
They thought
that's going to be the next Miami.
San Diego was going to be the next Miami. I started my career here, and I was going to school down here. So this is bringing things. The whole fashion
there's
scene.
We have a lot of crossover. I don't know if we actually met or we didn't meet in the past. But the other really strange crossover, and maybe it's meant to be, is when I first saw Troy speaking, there's something in the way he speaks and his mannerisms that's very like my old buddy, my old muse Rex. And I come to find out that they actually share the exact same birthday. They're both born on December 30th, and that's just like some wild cosmic connection for me. So I feel like you're in some sense a reincarnation of my old friend.
Yeah,
I love you. Thank you.
Dude, I love you too, man. And this is such a great friendship that we have, and we're only getting started. 30 years, 3 decades of fashion where we kind of cross paths. We've come back together. Our collaboration is coming out very soon. By the time you see this, the collaboration will be out. You can get a pair of
sungods.com. Sungods with a Z, sungods.com. Sungods California on the Instagram. And you're going to be seeing a lot of Mr. Troy Casey and some really colorful, cool Sun Gods pants and shorts, and we're stoked.
Yeah. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Follow Sasha.
So
follow Sun Gods California. These are all Sun Gods California clothing right now. And what a fantastic story. We are going to have you back on as a special guest.
There's so many more stories I wanted to tell you about. Playboy Mansion parties, trips on yachts to
Omi the Homie,
Saint-Tropez, Sardinia,
Calvin French, Ugly People,
Rex and I in Panorama. Well, we'll get to all of it next time.
Yeah, awesome. I'm such a big Rolling Stones fan too. So
oh yeah, on tour with the Rolling Stones. I didn't even tell you about the whorehouse in Amsterdam. Anyway, next time.
Next time, guys. God bless.
All right.
Woo! Woo!